Hey everyone, Kevin here with Victory 4x4. Today in the garage we're going to be installing a set of our high clearance Viper Cut style wings for our Blitz front bumper on the front of this 5th generation Toyota 4Runner. The wings have been designed in a way that those of you with currently installed Blitz bumpers will be able to purchase them and get them installed on your vehicle simply by drilling a few holes. Templates for those holes can be found in the installation document on the website on the page where you would have purchased this product. Those of you that are buying the wings at the same time as your Blitz bumper will already have all the holes that you'll see throughout this video to get your hardware installed. And if you are going to be installing your Blitz bumper at the same time as these wings, you'll want to reference the full Blitz bumper installation video for how to get this main center section installed, and then simultaneously using the two videos you should be able to install the wings along with it. We'll start things off by actually setting this to the side and marking and laying out our cut here on the front fascia. To lay out the cut, you're going to need a tape measure, ideally a flexible tape as well, along with a Sharpie marker, some masking tape, and if you have it available to you, some thinner fine line tape. Once you have those supplies, we're going to measure from 3 main locations, one being this general body line, one where you'll measure from the headlight down along the body line here, and one where the front fascia meets the fender out here. I'm gonna make my initial measurements and Sharpie marks directly here on the paint, as the Sharpie's not gonna damage the paint and our vehicle is obviously a bright color where this black Sharpie shows up pretty easily. If you're working on a darker colored vehicle and don't have maybe a silver or a gold Sharpie available to you, you can simply kind of roughly pre-measure and install a piece of tape in these locations, then measure and mark on the tape. So starting out here where the front fascia meets the fender, we're going to measure straight down with the hook on our tape measure in that body line location, kind of gently pulling down, and you're looking to be perpendicular to the ground here or perpendicular to this line will get you pretty close, and you're going to make a mark on the fascia right here at 2 inches where your tape intersects the wheel opening out on the side. As with any permanent cut like we're doing here, it's always a good idea to come back in and just double check your measurements. And if you're having any reservations at all, it's a good idea to be conservative with your cuts and leave a little bit extra material, as you can always kind of roughly fit your part and come back in and trim more as needed. The next measurement will be taken from the very peak of the 2 body lines here with your soft tape measure, in which case you will measure from that point, allowing your tape to just kind of drape, again perpendicular to the ground, straight down along this body line. You can kind of just carefully and gently pull that tight and make your mark here at 10 inches. The third measurement will be taken now using your standard tape measure again, basically coming perpendicular to where these 2 lines intersect, which also happens to be about the center of this opening, and measuring straight down. So simply kind of gently hook your tape measure there and make your mark a 1/2 inch down from that point. If you want to give yourself just one additional point of reference, you can kind of move down that body line and again just make a mark at 1/2 inch, as you should wind up a 1/2 inch below this line pretty much all the way across here. That one is not concrete. You're basically going to be using the previously marked locations now and drawing a straight line across those 2 and carrying it down along the front of this fascia. Now, in order to connect these points, one tool that works really well if you have it available to you is going to be a laser level, and you can, whether you have a tripod or not, do whatever you need to do to get it set up at the proper angle to intersect both of these points and carry a nice straight line across here, which you can then either with tape or a marker kind of mark out a little bit better and create your cut line along the fascia. Our vehicle, being the color it is, the red laser that we have kind of soaks in here and gets pretty hard to see on camera. So I'm just going to be using my 2-inch wide tape to generate my straight line here, which will work out just fine for most of you as well. With this, you can just start leaving enough excess out on the one end. I'm going to start kind of at the halfway point of my top mark up here and rotate the tape down as needed until it intersects the other marks along the front edge of the fascia. Now with the masking tape, you can always pull it up and retry as many times as needed to feel confident in your mark. So that part's kind of up to you. You can always start fresh with a new piece of tape if you feel you need to as well. Again, not a super concrete measurement on this one, but what I found here as we're getting this one installed is that your straight line, when it's carried down along the fascia and onto the Blitz bumper here, should wind up pretty close to the very bottom edge of this top mounting hole here on the front. That can vary just a little bit based on the fact that there is a little bit of vertical adjustability in the bumper when you're getting it installed. So then in the same fashion, you can come out along the side here and using the same method, connect the 2 points that you made previously out on the side to kind of complete your cut line here. At this point, it's always a good idea to come back and just add some additional tape to protect the remaining painted portions up here that we're going to be saving and keeping on the vehicle. And then everything below our cut line down here on the bottom will be discarded, so none of that's going to matter. So again, this step is going to vary quite a bit depending on whether you're doing this as a new install or adding these wings to your pre-existing Blitz bumper, but hopefully you've watched that full Blitz video and already have a good understanding of this hardware. So with that being said, you can now remove the hardware holding the fascia to the vehicle as well as this inner wheel liner and disconnect the two. These screws will use a 10mm socket, and then there's going to be a couple down below here as well, which same thing goes for those pre-existing Blitz customers. You can now remove the tie-ins that were once holding the fascia to our Blitz bumper. With that hardware out of the way, you can pull back the wheel liner, and you'll just want to double check inside of here and make sure there's not any wiring or factory hoses or anything that could be damaged along the way while you're making this cut. Now there's a lot of different tools you can use to cut this plastic fascia. We're going to be doing the majority of our cut using a 4.5-inch grinder with a standard cutoff wheel, along with a little bit of help maybe from our air saw as we get out toward the very ends. This step is obviously just using the cutoff disc and following our line here. However, I am going to leave myself just a little bit of material, less than 1/8 of an inch, just enough that I can kind of see the paint color between my disc and the tape, and that's where I'll come back and just kind of smooth things up with a grinder after the fact. So down in here toward the end of our cut is where I'm going to switch to this air saw. You may be able to use a Sawzall or something in here carefully as well, but this is just to kind of protect the edge of our powder coated bumper here so that we don't damage it with our cutoff disc. Again, you could also remove the fascia to complete this step. Then kind of same thing back here at the wheel opening. My air saw just seems to fit in here a little bit better. And then once I make this cut, I'll be able to remove this complete cut portion. At this point, I'll come back with a flap wheel sanding disc. This one's on an air grinder. You could do the same thing with an electric grinder and just clean up that last little bit to finish up kind of along my tape edge. You can kind of choose how critical you want to be with cleaning up the edge at this time. You can wait to kind of finish that step off until you've had a chance to test fit this wing once, or clean it up nicely now in hopes that you got it right on this first try. That's entirely up to you. I will then kind of peel my tape back, mostly just for a visual reference here so I can see exactly how this is going to fit and look once it's done and installed, and if I have to add some tape back in for a final trim on this cut, we can do so. Now with that cut section out of the way, you can see the two vertically slotted holes here on the vertical support inside of your Blitz bumper. These are two holes that again you will have to drill in an older bumper and may have to oversize them slightly since you won't necessarily be able to use slots. You can also see here that this plastic upper air dam piece may need to be trimmed a little bit more than previously as well to make clearance for these two holes. The way the brace goes in here, you'll be using the empty slotted horizontal holes to bolt to those vertically slotted holes on the bumper, leaving the pre-installed PEM nut end to mount to the wing itself. Here you see a vertical flange on the back of ours. This is a prototype bracket, so your vertical flange will mount out here on the front edge. For mounting hardware on these inside slots, you'll be using two 3/8 hex bolts with washers, which you'll need to reach through the inside of the winch access holes and get those started in the slots up here. You can then feed the brace into place and then install the serrated flange nuts here on this side. You'll want to leave that hardware just a little bit loose so that you have adjustability in this bracket until the outer wing is installed. You can then begin to feed the wing into its mounting location, get it lined up with the mounting holes, and install 3/8 black button heads at all 6 locations. From here, you should still have some minor adjustment in all 6 of these bolts. You can then position the wing as needed and tighten these up with a 7/32 hex. As you tighten the remaining hardware, you'll want to kind of watch the wing and see the hardware may draw it into really any given direction depending on which bolts you're tightening. This is where you'll also want to start to look a little more closely at the gap between your wing and the fascia, and you may need to come back, make some additional marks, and clean up your cut line here. So once you've cleaned up your cut line out here and you're happy with the gap along that edge, you can come back in here and reinstall the top fastener for the fascia, as well as the one here for the fender liner, and then we can move on to some trimming of the liner itself. You can kind of see how I have this one already sort of pre-marked for how we plan to cut it. This is basically following the same line as the factory washer bottle that's going to be up behind here, but there's really no specific rhyme or reason to how these get cut. I know some of you guys might wind up heating them and trying to mold form them a little bit more to your preference, and that's totally up to you. So we're going to cut what you see here. You can do this usually on this thin plastic with a good pair of scissors even, some tin snips, or just a sharp razor blade if you're careful there. So that's what I'm going to start with and just start slowly tracing out this line. Now here I have the larger majority of this removed. I'll still have some cleanup work to come back and do on some of these edges, but one thing we very intentionally did and are going to recommend you guys do is leave a small flap up here just above what would be this factory retainer location. That can be then tucked in to the back side of this wing just as one additional small piece to help hold this in place. With that being said, it does look like we're going to have to make another small kind of U-shaped cut there to allow that to tuck all the way in. Then with things cleaned up a little more on the cut side of things, I was able to just kind of drill one additional hole in the tab off the side of the washer bottle down here and install a Christmas tree style clip, and one more hole down here along the bottom. In this location I just put a zip tie because the clip was going to run into the washer bottle pump, and then we just zip tied the hoses backing up out of the way here. We can then go cut the driver's side in a similar fashion. However, over there you're not going to have the washer bottle to contend with, so your cut may wind up looking just a little bit different. After you've cleaned up those liners on both sides, it's always a good idea to come back through and double check that all your hardware is tight to complete your installation. So if you guys have any questions at all about this installation or anything else we offer here at Victory 4x4, you can always reach out to us. You can send us an email at info@victory4x4.com or call us at 269-459-8447.